Hello everyone, I'm Jared and welcome to Level With Us, and I am pleased to report that this is the last episode where I will be on my own. Marcus will be back with us next week, so looking forward to that. This week I wanted to talk about Horizon Forbidden West on the PS5. This is that one game that came out around the same time as Elden Ring, which was unfortunate for them, but I played through the whole game and I really enjoyed it. It was very fun. It was a fun way to break in my new PS5 with this big budget exclusive AAA game. But the reason I wanted to talk about it today is because I'm feeling a bit torn on it. On the one hand, I think it's better than the original in almost every way. From a gameplay standpoint, it's way more refined, it's way more fun. But, on the other hand, it's really not that different from the original. Not different enough to really make it worth playing both of them. But on the other hand, the story in this game is so reliant on you having played the first game that I don't think you could really enjoy the story without playing the first one. So let's go ahead and dive a bit deeper. First, the things I really liked about the game. I think this perfects the original's gameplay. All the things I disliked about Horizon Zero Dawn are way better now. The melee combat is way more fun. I love using the spear. I love doing the heavy and light attacks and stringing them together for combos, which is great. The skill tree is much improved. I like that there's several different types of game styles to progress in. I think that was a really smart way of making you feel like you're getting stronger, but in the way that you choose. Traversal is way more fun. You have like a little hook shot that lets you jump up to ledges way faster. You have a glider to jump off from high vantage points, just like in Breath of the Wild. And eventually you unlock flying, which is just great. I like the side content in this game a lot more than the original. There's way more really engaging mini games, including this racing game where you're grabbing items and trying to shoot the other players while getting across the finish line. It's basically Mario Kart, and I just think that's awesome. There's also a board game called Machine Strike where you collect pieces over time, and then you kind of play this little tabletop strategy game with those pieces that you've collected or bought throughout the course of the game. And if you know me, you would know that I am a sucker for games within games, or rather, board games within video games. Those really hook me, and I was very addicted to playing Machine Strike against every single character that I could find in the game. The game also looks amazing. Now, the original still looks fantastic as well. I thought this game was also a delight for the eyes. The views are incredible. It's incredibly, incredibly detailed. And if I can throw in a little star piece, there was a moment of the game where at the very beginning you start in Zion's National Park, which I've been to in Utah. And there's a side quest that requires you to go up a certain hike to the Emerald Pools. And I didn't realize until I got there where I was. The game had even told me through some like ancient artifacts, because this is a post-apocalyptic game. You know, technology is considered primal and dated. But there was like a little thing I found that mentioned Zion's, and I just didn't put two and two together until I reached the Emerald Pools. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've walked down this path. It looks almost identical to the place I was very recently. That was a very cool gaming moment that I don't think I'll ever experience again playing a video game. So I got to give special props to the team for recreating that area so well. And I'm sure other players have had similar experiences going to, Vegas and San Francisco in this game, which is very cool. So yeah, visuals are great. The game's core identity of fighting giant robot animals and dinosaurs is just as good as it ever was, and I think it's a very polished, very fun experience. But now we need to go into how it's so similar to the original that I don't know whether I could really fully recommend playing both of them instead of just choosing one. So, the game has the exact same loop. You fight, you craft, and you go to the next objective in the story. Now, there is a really cool part where the game kind of becomes a little more nonlinear, and you can hit like 3 different objectives in any order, which I really appreciated. But otherwise, it's still just the same kind of point A to point B. See what happens next in the story. Now go forward. Now fight robots again. Now do a slow platforming segment. Now fight robots again. It's almost exactly the same. And even though I think they perfected the gameplay, I don't think the core loop of the game is much improved. It's still very good, but if you've played a lot of open world games, I can't say this is going to reignite that spark that, Breath of the Wild kind of did in, revolutionizing the formula. This is a pretty by the numbers open world game. Again, I very much liked it, but also it's not innovative in any particular way. I just think it's a much more refined game compared to the original. The only way I could really justify having someone who has not played either game but wants to play both is because of the story. And that kind of brings us to our final point. The story isn't really good in this game unless you've played the original. I've seen reviews for sequels of games online, including this one, where they say, oh, the story's more enjoyable if you've played the first game, but this game still does a pretty good job of recapping the story, so you can still jump in and enjoy it. I call baloney on this. Even if they technically recap the story, even though they mention the events that happened in the first game, I don't think it's really that impactful to play through this story if you didn't play through the events of the first game yourself. And honestly, even if you learn the gameplay well enough, I don't think you're really going to have the motivation to play through the story objectives without seeing for yourself what had happened before. And in terms of, recapping the story, I played the first game only a few months ago, very recently, and I didn't even recognize some of the recurring characters that appear in this game. Like, that's, maybe it's because they weren't very memorable, but I don't think the argument that, oh, well, it recaps the game so you can just jump in and be fine, I don't think that really holds water, because many of the twists in this game are really built on the foundation of the first game. The reason I say all of this is because I think this game does have really cool story moments. I think there's some very cool sci-fi twists that build off the original, and also the world building is very good. All the different tribes of people that are still on the earth have their own cultures and their own religions, and I really liked exploring and kind of finding out more of what happened to the world in this part of the world. I'm not saying it's the best story ever. In fact, it's pretty rushed towards the end of the game. I don't think the climax was very, climactic, but it's still really enjoyable. And if you liked the first game story, it's cool to see a continuation of it, to see what happens. So, who is this game really for? I think this is where things get a little tricky. If you've played the original game, Zero Dawn, and you really liked it, I think you will love this game. It's better in almost every way. It picks up where the story left off and has some interesting revelations about the world. If you haven't played the original game, I think gameplay-wise, this game is way better, but story-wise, it's not very interesting unless you know the first story. So I guess the compromise would be that if you want to play this game and you haven't played the original, maybe watch a detailed recap on YouTube to kind of get a feel and an understanding for how the first story plays out. Or if you're just not interested in the story at all and you just think fighting robot dinosaurs is really cool, I guess you have nothing to worry about. You can just go ahead and play. But I think it's best experienced after playing the first game. I just don't think I'll ever replay the first game because there's no reason to, since they're so similar. But those are my convoluted feelings on the matter. And for those of you who have played Forbidden West, I would love to hear your opinion as well. But that'll wrap it up for this week. I'm very excited for what we have in store for this show going forward. Now that Marcus is back, we'll be back to some of our regular discussions, including some special guests, some new indie titles, and even a game that hasn't come out yet that we'll be covering on the show. So, until next time, I'm Jared, and I'll level with you then.